Mom, did you like the chocolates? Clementine's voice came through the phone with that familiar, hopeful tone I'd known since she was a little girl, showing me crayon drawings. I was sitting at my desk in the study, sorting through some investment papers, my reading glasses perched on my nose. It was the morning after my 58th birthday, and the spring sunlight was streaming through the windows of my Charleston home. I smiled, still scanning the documents in front of me. Oh, sweetheart, I gave them to Garrett and the kids. You know I don't really eat sweets anymore, and they absolutely love candy. The silence on the other end was so complete that I actually pulled the phone away from my ear to check if the call had dropped. The screen showed we were still connected. 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 7 seconds of nothing. Then came the scream. Wait, you did what? The sound that followed will haunt me for the rest of my life. It was like all the air left her body at once. I heard a strange, strangled gasp, then something heavy hitting the floor. Then Garrett's voice, distant and panicked, shouting my daughter's name over and over. Clementine! Clementine! Oh my God! Clem! My heart stopped. I was on my feet before I even realized I'd moved, the investment papers scattering across the hardwood floor. Garrett! Garrett, what's happening? What's wrong with her? His voice was shaking when he finally picked up her phone. Mrs. Langley Crane. She collapsed. She fainted. I'm calling 911. I have to go. The line went dead. I stood there in my study, surrounded by the trappings of my successful life, my $12 million net worth, my restored historic mansion, my designer furniture, and none of it meant anything. My daughter had collapsed, and somehow, impossibly, it was connected to a box of chocolates I had thoughtlessly given away. My hands were trembling as I grabbed my car keys. The drive from Charleston to Savannah would take about 2 hours if I obeyed the speed limit. I made it in 90 minutes, my knuckles white on the steering wheel the entire way, my mind racing through every possible explanation. Had there been something wrong with the chocolates? Had Clementine accidentally poisoned them somehow? But no, that didn't make sense. Garrett and the children had eaten them, and they were fine. This was something else. Something about the act of giving them away had broken something inside my daughter. Why? They were just chocolates. I called Garrett 17 times during that drive. He answered once, briefly, to tell me they were at Memorial Health and that Clementine was conscious but refusing to see me. Those last 4 words felt like a knife sliding between my ribs. Refusing to see me. My own daughter. My firstborn. The little girl who used to run to the door when I came home from business trips, even though those trips became longer and more frequent as my company grew. The teenager who left notes on my desk that I always meant to read, but never quite found the time. The woman who had, apparently, sent me chocolates for my birthday that meant something so profound that giving them away had caused her to physically collapse, and I had no idea what any of it meant. The hospital parking lot was a blur. I don't remember walking through the automatic doors or finding the information desk. I just remember standing in a sterile hallway on the 3rd floor, and Garrett walking toward me with a look on his face I'd never seen before. He's normally such a cheerful man, easygoing, always quick with a smile, but now his eyes were red-rimmed, and there was something in his expression that looked almost like anger. She's okay physically, he said, before I could ask. The doctors say it was a panic attack that caused her to faint. Her blood pressure dropped suddenly. He paused, running a hand through his disheveled hair. Mrs. Langley Crane, what exactly did you say to her on the phone? I told her I gave the chocolates to you and the children, that's all. I don't understand what's happening, Garrett. They were just chocolates. He stared at me for a long moment, and I watched something shift in his face. The anger faded into something worse. Pity. He pitied me, and I didn't know why. Come with me, he said quietly. There's something you need to see. He led me to a small waiting area around the corner. It was empty, except for a trash can and a few plastic chairs. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a crumpled piece of cardstock. Gold lettering caught the fluorescent light. This was inside the box, he said, handing it to me. Tucked under the top layer of chocolates. Clem asked me to find it after she told me what happened. I took the card with trembling fingers. The handwriting was my daughter's, that distinctive artistic script she developed during her years of jewelry design. I read the words once, then again, then a 3rd time, as their meaning slowly sank into my consciousness like stones dropping into deep water. For the memories we can still create. Each chocolate holds a piece of our past. The lavender from Grandma Dorothea's garden. The honey from Pemberton Farm, where you took me that summer I was 8. The rose essence from your perfume, the one you wore when I was small and still believed you'd come to my dance recitals. I made these with my own hands, Mom. I spent 6 weeks learning how. I wanted to give you something that money couldn't buy, something that proved I remember the moments you've probably forgotten. I love you. I always have. I just wish you could see me. Your daughter, Clementine. The card slipped from my fingers. I understood now. I understood everything, and the weight of it was crushing. My daughter hadn't sent me a box of store-bought sweets. She had sent me 6 weeks of her life. She had sent me painstakingly crafted pieces of our shared history, memories she had held on to while I was too busy building an empire to notice. She had sent me her heart, wrapped in gold paper and tied with silk ribbon, and I had handed it to her husband without even opening the box. She learned to make chocolates, I whispered. From scratch? Garrett nodded slowly. She took a course, 3 nights a week for 6 weeks, plus all the practice batches. She must have made 100 chocolates before she got them right. She was so nervous about sending them. She kept asking me if I thought you'd like them, if you'd understand what they meant. I sank into one of the plastic chairs, my legs suddenly unable to support me. The lavender was from my mother's garden. Clementine remembered that? She remembers everything, Mrs. Langley Crane. Every moment she spent with you. Every moment she wanted to spend with you. Every time you promised to come to something and didn't make it. Every time she left you a note or a drawing that you never mentioned. She remembers all of it. I looked up at this man I had never quite approved of, this musician who I secretly thought wasn't ambitious enough for my daughter. His eyes held no accusation, only a profound sadness. She talks about you all the time, he continued. About how she wished you could see her work, really see it. About how she wishes you'd visit without bringing your checkbook. About how she's spent her whole life trying to figure out how to make you proud, and nothing she does ever seems to be enough. I am proud of her, I said, and my voice cracked on the words. I'm so proud of her. Have you ever told her that? The question hung in the air between us, and I couldn't answer it, because the answer was no. I had never told her. I had assumed she knew. I had assumed that the trust fund I set up for her, the offer to invest in her jewelry business, the expensive gifts I sent for every birthday and holiday were all telling her what I felt. How could she not know? But sitting in that hospital waiting room, holding a crumpled card that contained more love than I had expressed to my daughter in 34 years, I realized that Clementine didn't know. She had never known. And my careless dismissal of her handcrafted gift had confirmed her deepest fear, that nothing she did would ever be enough to make her mother truly see her. Can I see her? I asked. Garrett shook his head. She asked me to tell you to go home. She says she needs time. How much time? I don't know. She's really hurt, Mrs. Langley Crane. This wasn't just about the chocolates. This was about everything. The chocolates were just... He searched for the word. They were her last attempt. She told me before she sent them that if this didn't work, she was done trying. She was going to accept that she'd never have the relationship with you that she wanted and just move on. Done trying. My daughter had been on the verge of giving up on me entirely, and I hadn't even known there was anything to give up on. I drove back to Charleston in a daze. The beautiful spring scenery passed by unnoticed. The historic oaks dripping with Spanish moss, the elegant antebellum homes, the carefully manicured gardens. None of it registered. All I could see was my daughter's handwriting on that card. All I could feel was the weight of 34 years of missed moments pressing down on my chest. When I got home, I went straight to my study and sat in the dark. My phone showed 14 missed calls from my younger daughter, Laurelyn. I couldn't face talking to her yet. I couldn't face talking to anyone. I thought about the woman I had become, Theodora Langley Crane, founder and former CEO of Langley Interiors, a chain of 14 high-end design boutiques stretching from Charleston to Miami. Self-made millionaire, philanthropist, patron of the arts, respected member of Charleston society. I thought about the woman I had been. 25 years old, 2 small daughters, a husband who was never home, and a dream of building something that was entirely my own. I remembered the fire that drove me, The determination that kept me going through 18-hour days and red-eye flights and meetings that ran through dance recitals and school plays and homework sessions. I told myself it was for them, for Clementine and Laurelyn, for their future security, so they would never have to struggle the way I had struggled, growing up in a family where every dollar was counted twice. But sitting in my dark study, I realized the truth I had been avoiding for 3 decades. It wasn't for them. It was for me. The empire I built was my validation, my proof that I mattered, that I was more than a neglected girl from a poor family in rural Georgia. My daughters were collateral damage in my war against my own insecurities, and now one of them had collapsed in her home because I couldn't be bothered to open a box of chocolates she had made with her own hands. My phone buzzed. A text from Garrett. She's sleeping now. Doctor gave her something to help her rest. Kids are confused about why mommy is sad. I told them she's just not feeling well. I'll keep you updated. I typed back, "Thank you. Please tell her I love her." The response came 30 seconds later. "With respect, Mrs. Langley Crane, I think you need to find a way to tell her yourself. Words from me won't mean anything." He was right. Of course he was right. But how do you apologize for 34 years of emotional absence? How do you explain to your daughter that you love her desperately when you've spent her entire life failing to show it? I thought about my own mother, Dorothea, now 82 and living in an assisted care facility across town. She had worked 2 jobs when I was growing up, cleaning houses during the day, waitressing at night. I barely saw her. When I did, she was too exhausted to do much more than make sure I'd eaten and done my homework before collapsing into bed. I swore I would be different. I swore my daughters would have everything I didn't have. The best schools, the nicest clothes, opportunities I could only dream of as a child. But somewhere along the way, I had become my mother. Not in the details, perhaps. My absence wasn't caused by economic necessity, but by ambition. But the result was the same. A daughter who grew up feeling invisible. A daughter who spent her childhood leaving notes for a mother who was never there to read them. The phone buzzed again. This time, it was Laurelyn. "Mom, I just talked to Garrett. What happened? Are you okay?" I wanted to lie. I wanted to say everything was fine, just a misunderstanding, nothing to worry about. But I was so tired of pretending, so tired of maintaining the facade of the perfect, successful woman who had everything under control. "No," I said. "I'm not okay. I did something terrible to your sister, and I don't know how to fix it." The silence on Laurelyn's end was different from Clementine's, heavier somehow. When she spoke, her voice was careful, measured. "The chocolates, Garrett told me. Laurelyn, I didn't know. I didn't know she'd made them herself. I didn't know about the card. I just thought they were regular chocolates, and I don't eat sweets anymore, so You gave them away without even opening the box." "Yes." Another long pause. "Mom, do you know how many times Clementine has cried on my shoulder about you? Do you know how many times she's asked me what she's doing wrong, why she can't make you proud of her, why you seem to see right through her no matter what she accomplishes?" I closed my eyes. "No, I didn't know. She idolizes you. She always has. When we were kids, she kept every single business card you ever gave her. She used to tell her friends that her mom was the most successful woman in Charleston. She defended you every time someone commented on how you were never at school events. She made excuses for you for years." My chest ached. Laurelyn? And then she grew up and realized that maybe the excuses weren't enough anymore. Maybe she needed to accept that her mother was never going to see her the way she wanted to be seen. But she couldn't let go. She kept trying. "The jewelry business, that was for you. Did you know that? She chose design because you're a designer. She wanted something in common with you, some way to connect. I offered to invest in her business. She refused." Laurelyn laughed bitterly. "Of course she refused. She didn't want your money, Mom. She wanted your attention, your approval, your presence. She wanted you to come to her studio and look at her work and tell her it was beautiful. Not write a check and move on to the next item on your agenda." The words hit me like physical blows. Each one true, each one deserved. "I didn't know," I whispered again. "No," my younger daughter agreed. "You didn't, because you never asked. You never looked closely enough to see what was right in front of you." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice had softened slightly. "I love you, Mom. I do. And I know you love us in your own way. But your own way has never been enough for Clementine. She needed more than you knew how to give. And now, I don't know if she's ever going to let you try again. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my study until the sun came up, surrounded by the evidence of my success, the awards on the walls, the framed magazine covers featuring my boutiques, the crystal paperweight from the Charleston Business Association naming me Entrepreneur of the Year. All of it meaningless now. When the first light of dawn crept through the windows, I finally allowed myself to remember, to really remember the life I had built and the price my daughters had paid for it. Clementine was born in the spring of 1991, when I was 24 years old and still working as an assistant at a small interior design firm in downtown Charleston. Harrison and I had been married for 2 years, and he was already traveling constantly for his corporate law practice. I remember holding my newborn daughter in the hospital room, alone because Harrison was in Atlanta closing a deal, and promising her that I would give her everything I never had. I meant it. God help me, I meant every word. But everything became something different over the years. It became financial security instead of bedtime stories. It became the best private schools instead of homework help at the kitchen table. It became trust funds and investment accounts instead of afternoons in the park. I started my first boutique when Clementine was 3 and Laurelyn was a newborn. I had saved $3,000 from years of careful budgeting, and I borrowed another $7,000 from a bank that didn't really believe a 27-year-old mother of 2 could succeed in the luxury design market. I worked 18-hour days. I networked relentlessly. I studied every aspect of the business until I could discuss fabric sourcing and furniture manufacturing in my sleep. The boutique turned a profit in its second year. I opened a second location when Clementine was 5, a third when she was 7. By the time she was 10, I had 6 stores and was being featured in regional business publications as a rising star in Southern retail. I was so proud of what I was building. Every new store felt like a victory, a proof that I was more than the poor girl from rural Georgia who wore hand-me-down clothes and shared a bedroom with 3 siblings. I was becoming someone who mattered, someone whose name meant something in Charleston society. What I didn't see was what my success was costing my daughters. Clementine's first dance recital happened when she was 6. I promised her I would be there. I bought a new dress to wear. I had the date circled on my calendar for weeks. But the morning of the recital, a supplier crisis threatened to derail a major installation for one of my biggest clients. I told myself I would handle it quickly and still make it in time. I didn't make it. I arrived at the dance studio 45 minutes after the recital ended. Clementine was sitting on the steps outside, still in her pink tutu, her face streaked with tears. Harrison was there too, looking at me with an expression I pretended not to understand. "Mommy, you missed it," Clementine said. "You missed my dance." I knelt down and hugged her, promising I would make it up to her, promising I would be there next time, promising that this would never happen again. But it did happen again, and again, and again. The specifics changed, but the pattern remained the same. School plays I arrived late to or missed entirely. Parent-teacher conferences Harrison attended alone. Birthday parties I had to leave early because of work emergencies that, looking back now, weren't really emergencies at all. They were just more important to me than being present for my children. Laurelyn adapted. She learned early that I showed love through practical actions, not physical presence. She accepted the expensive gifts and the generous allowance as translations of affection, and she built her emotional life around friends and school and eventually her career. She never seemed to need me the way Clementine did. But Clementine never stopped needing me. She never stopped trying to capture my attention, to earn my approval, to make me see her. She left drawings on my desk. She wrote me letters. She made me cards for every holiday, each one more elaborate than the last. She would wait up past her bedtime when I had late meetings, just hoping to catch 5 minutes with me before I collapsed into bed. I saw the drawings. I saw the letters. I saw the cards. I told myself I would respond to them properly when things calmed down, when I had more time. I put them in a drawer, intending to go through them later and tell her how much they meant to me. Later never came. The drawer filled up. I moved the contents to a box in the closet. Eventually, I stopped noticing the new additions entirely. Clementine would ask if I liked her drawing, and I would say yes, without even knowing which drawing she meant. She would reference a letter she'd written, and I would nod along, pretending I remembered words I'd never read. I was lying to my daughter. I was lying to her every single day, and I told myself it didn't matter because she couldn't possibly know. But children know. They always know. And every lie was another small cut in the bond between us, until it was more wound than connection. Harrison died of a heart attack 6 years ago. He was 61, seemingly healthy, and then suddenly gone. I was in the middle of negotiating the sale of my company when I got the call. I had been planning to retire, to finally slow down and enjoy the fortune I had spent decades building. At his funeral, I watched my daughters grieve, and I realized with a shock that I barely knew them. Laurelyn was 25, a first-year associate at a law firm in Charleston. Clementine was 28, newly married to Garrett, running a small jewelry design business out of their apartment in Savannah. When had they become adults? When had they built entire lives that I knew almost nothing about? I promised myself things would be different. Without the company to consume my attention, without Harrison's absence to normalize my own, I would rebuild my relationships with my daughters. I would become the mother I should have been all along, but I didn't know how. I tried with money. I offered Clementine $200,000 to expand her jewelry business. She refused. I offered to buy them a bigger house. She said they were happy where they were. I sent expensive gifts for every occasion and many non-occasions. She thanked me politely and changed the subject. I tried with visits. I would drive to Savannah and take them all out to dinner at the finest restaurants. But the conversations were stilted, full of long pauses and safe topics. Clementine would ask about my charity work, and I would ask about the children, and we would carefully avoid anything that might reveal how little we actually knew each other. Laurelyn was easier. She had learned to accept my language of love, so our relationship functioned smoothly on the surface. We had lunch once a month. We discussed her cases, her social life, her plans for the future. It was pleasant and cordial, and utterly superficial, but neither of us seemed to mind. With Clementine, nothing was easy. Every conversation felt like navigating a minefield. She would make references to childhood events I didn't remember. She would mention letters and drawings I had never acknowledged. She would look at me with those eyes that were so like mine, filled with a hope that I could never quite satisfy. Last Christmas was particularly difficult. I gave her a pair of diamond earrings worth $15,000. She gave me a handmade photo album filled with pictures from her childhood, each one annotated with her memories of the moment. I flipped through it quickly, said it was lovely, and moved on to watching the grandchildren open their presents. Later, I found her crying in the kitchen. When I asked what was wrong, she wiped her eyes and said it was nothing, just hormones, just tiredness. But the photo album sat on my coffee table for months afterward, and every time I saw it, I felt a twinge of something I refused to examine too closely. 3 weeks before my 58th birthday, Clementine called to ask what I wanted as a gift. I told her the same thing I always told her. Nothing. I have everything I need. Just come visit when you can. She was quiet for a moment, then said she had an idea and hung up. I didn't think much about it. Birthdays had become just another day to me, a reminder that time was passing and that the legacy I was leaving behind wasn't the one I had imagined when I started out. My boutiques had been sold. My name was being slowly erased from the business I had built. All I had left was money and a big empty house and 2 daughters who had learned to live without me. When the package arrived on my birthday, I barely glanced at it. A box of chocolates, I assumed. Nice enough. Thoughtful, in a generic sort of way. But I had stopped eating sweets years ago, part of the careful health regimen that my doctor insisted would help me live long enough to enjoy my retirement. Garrett and the kids were visiting that weekend, dropping off a birthday card from Clementine, who couldn't make the trip herself. Little Calder and Ivy ran around my formal living room with the energy that only children possess, and I found myself smiling genuinely for the first time in weeks. When Garrett mentioned that the kids had been begging for candy, I remembered the chocolates. "Oh, here," I said, handing him the unopened box. "Clementine sent these, but you know I don't eat sweets. Let the children enjoy them." He took the box with a strange expression on his face, but I was too distracted by Ivy tugging at my hand to notice. I didn't see him hesitate. I didn't see him open the box and pause at what he found inside. I didn't see him quietly pocket the card before letting the children dig in. I didn't see any of it, because I wasn't paying attention, because I had never learned to pay attention to the things that really mattered. And now, my daughter was in a hospital bed in Savannah, recovering from a collapse that my carelessness had caused. And I was sitting alone in my beautiful empty house, holding a crumpled card that contained more love than I had ever shown her, wondering if it was too late to become the mother she had always needed me to be. The days that followed were the longest of my life. I called Clementine every morning and every evening. The calls went straight to voicemail. I left messages that started out apologetic and gradually became desperate. "Clementine, please call me back. I need to explain. I need you to know how sorry I am. Please, sweetheart, please just talk to me." She never responded. I sent flowers, 3 dozen white roses, her favorite, with a card that said simply, "I'm sorry, I love you, Mom." The florist called me the next day to say the delivery had been refused. The driver had left them on the porch, and someone had placed them in the trash bin by the curb. I wrote letters, long, rambling letters where I tried to put into words all the things I had never said. I told her I was proud of her. I told her I admired her courage in pursuing her art. I told her that her jewelry designs were beautiful, that I had saved pictures of every piece she'd ever posted online, that I showed them to my friends at charity luncheons. I told her I loved her. The letters came back unopened, returned to sender, every single one. Garrett texted me updates, brief and factual. Clementine was recovering physically. The children were asking why Grandma hadn't visited. He was trying to hold everything together while giving his wife the space she needed. "She's not ready to talk," he wrote on the 4th day. "Please give her time." But time felt like a luxury I no longer had. Every hour that passed was another hour of silence, another hour of distance growing between us. I had spent 34 years taking my daughter for granted. Now that I finally understood what I had done, I couldn't bear to waste another minute. On the 5th day, I drove to Savannah without telling anyone. I told myself I would just check on her, just see with my own eyes that she was okay. I wouldn't force a conversation. I would just be there, nearby in case she changed her mind. I parked across the street from their house, a charming Victorian that Clementine had spent years restoring and decorating. I could see her studio in the converted garage, the windows filled with the warm glow of her work lights. She was in there, working, alive, moving forward with her life as if I didn't exist. I sat in my car for 3 hours, watching. I saw Garrett leave with the children, probably taking them to school. I saw him return alone, carrying grocery bags. I saw the lights in the studio flicker as Clementine moved around inside, creating beautiful things with hands that had once made chocolates for a mother who threw them away. I never got out of the car. I couldn't bring myself to knock on her door and face the possibility that she would refuse to answer. So I just sat there, watching from a distance, feeling the full weight of what I had lost. When I finally drove home that night, I found Laurelyn waiting on my porch. "Garrett called me," she said. "He saw your car." I should have known. In a neighborhood like that, a Mercedes parked for 3 hours would attract attention. I just needed to see that she was okay. "She's not okay, Mom. She's devastated. And you sitting outside her house like some kind of stalker isn't helping." The word stung. Stalker. Is that what I had become? A woman so desperate for her daughter's attention that she would sit in a car for hours just to catch a glimpse of her? Laurelyn followed me inside. She looked tired, her usually immaculate appearance slightly disheveled. I realized she was caught in the middle of this, torn between loyalty to her sister and whatever residual connection she still felt to me. "Tell me what to do," I said. "Please, Laurelyn. Tell me how to fix this." She sat down heavily on my living room sofa. "I don't know if you can fix it, Mom. Some things, once they're broken, they stay broken. I refuse to accept that. It's not about what you accept. It's about what Clementine can forgive." She looked at me with eyes that held more understanding than I deserved. "Do you even know why she's so hurt? Really know? Because I gave away the chocolates she made, because I didn't open them, didn't read her card, didn't appreciate the effort she put into them." Laurelyn shook her head slowly. "That's what happened. That's not why she's hurt." "Then explain it to me, please." My younger daughter was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. Clementine has spent her entire life trying to earn your love. Not because you don't love her. She knows you love her. But because you've never shown it in a way she could feel. She needed words, Mom. She needed presence. She needed you to see her drawings and tell her they were beautiful. She needed you to come to her recitals and cheer the loudest. She needed you to read her letters and write back. I know I failed her in those ways. You don't know. You don't know the half of it. Laurelyn's eyes were glistening now. When we were kids, Clementine used to make up stories about you. She'd tell her friends that you were a secret agent, and that's why you missed things, or that you were a famous doctor saving lives, and you couldn't leave the hospital. She created this whole fantasy version of you because the real version was too painful to accept. My chest ached. I didn't know that. Of course you didn't. You weren't there. There was no accusation in her voice, just a profound sadness. And when she got older, she stopped making up stories. She started making excuses instead. Real ones. She'd tell people that you were building a business, that you were providing for your family, that your success would benefit all of us in the long run. She defended you to everyone, including herself, Laurelyn. But then she became an adult. She got married. She had kids of her own. And she realized that all those excuses didn't actually make it hurt less. They just helped her hide the hurt. And she decided that maybe if she just found the right way to reach you, the right gesture, the right gift, you would finally see her the way she'd always wanted to be seen. The chocolates. 6 weeks of learning, of practicing, of pouring her memories and her love into something tangible. The last attempt of a daughter who had never stopped trying to reach a mother who was always just out of reach. The chocolates were her last hope, I whispered. Laurelyn nodded. She told Garrett that if this didn't work, she was done. She was going to stop trying and just accept that your relationship would never be what she wanted it to be. She was going to protect herself by expecting nothing. And I proved her right. I proved that nothing she does will ever be enough. You didn't mean to. I know that. She knows that too, somewhere underneath all the pain. But intent doesn't erase impact, Mom. You hurt her in the deepest way possible, and it's going to take more than flowers and letters to undo that. I sank into the chair across from her, feeling older than my 58 years. What do I do? How do I show her that I see her now, that I've finally understood? I don't know. Laurelyn's honesty was brutal in its simplicity. But I know what won't work. Grand gestures won't work. Expensive gifts won't work. Showing up uninvited and watching her house from your car definitely won't work. Those are all things you would do, Mom. Things that make you feel like you're taking action. But they're not about her. They're about making yourself feel better. She was right. Everything I had done since that terrible phone call had been about me. My guilt, my desperation, my need to fix things on my timeline. I hadn't once stopped to consider what Clementine actually needed. I went to see your grandmother today, Laurelyn said quietly. Dorothea. I looked up, surprised. Laurelyn rarely visited my mother. Their relationship was cordial but distant, much like mine with my own daughters. The irony wasn't lost on me. She told me something interesting. She said she has a box of things Clementine gave you over the years. Drawings, letters, cards. Things you put away and never looked at. She's been saving them since we were children. My stomach dropped. How does she have them? Apparently, when you moved into this house, you threw out a bunch of boxes from the old place. Grandma was helping with the move, and she rescued them. She's had them in her room at the facility ever since. 30 years of my daughter's love, sitting in a box in an assisted living facility. Things I had thrown away without even knowing what they were. Things my own mother had valued enough to save. I need to see them, I said. Laurelyn stood up. I know. That's why I'm here. Grandma wants to talk to you. She says she has things to tell you that she should have said a long time ago. She paused at the door. But Mom, be prepared. I don't think you're going to like what she has to say. The drive to Magnolia Gardens felt endless. It was only 20 minutes from my house, but every red light, every slow driver, every minor delay felt like torture. My mother had answers. My mother had pieces of my daughter that I had carelessly discarded. My mother had apparently been watching me repeat her mistakes for decades. Dorothea was sitting in her usual chair by the window when I arrived. At 82, she was still sharp as a tack, her mind undiminished, even as her body had begun to fail. She looked up when I entered, and her expression held something I had rarely seen from her: disappointment. "Sit down, Theodora," she said. "We have a lot to discuss." I sat in the chair across from her, feeling like a child called to account for bad behavior. "Laurelyn said you have Clementine's things, the drawings and letters." "I do." She gestured to a cardboard box on the floor beside her chair. It was worn and water-stained, clearly old. "I've kept them for over 20 years. I kept waiting for you to ask about them, to realize what you'd lost. You never did. I didn't know they existed, because you never looked." Her voice was firm but not unkind. "You put them away without examining them, just like you put away everything that didn't fit into your plans. Your daughter's art, her words, her heart, all of it filed away for later, and later never came." I reached for the box, but she stopped me with a gesture. "Before you look at those, I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you years ago when you first started building your empire." "What?" Dorothea's eyes, still sharp behind her glasses, met mine directly. "I did the same thing to you. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3. I told myself it was for you, so you could have a better life, so you wouldn't grow up in poverty like I did. But the truth was, I was running from the reality of being a single mother with no education and no prospects, running from the shame I felt every time I couldn't buy you new clothes or take you to the places other children got to go. I had never heard my mother talk about this before. She had always been stoic, practical, not given to emotional revelations. You needed me, Theodora. You needed me to be present, to listen to you, to help you with your homework, and come to your school events. And I wasn't there. I was working, always working, telling myself it was for you when really it was for me, for my pride, for my need to feel like I was doing something worthwhile. Mom, you did what you had to do. We would have starved if you hadn't worked. Perhaps. But I could have worked less. I could have found a balance. Instead, I used work as an excuse to avoid the hard parts of parenting, the emotional parts, the messy, complicated, terrifying parts of being truly present for another human being. She reached out and took my hand, something she rarely did. "And you learned from me. You learned that love means providing, not being present. You learned that success is measured in dollars, not in moments. You learned that it's safer to build an empire than to build a relationship, because empires don't ask questions you can't answer." Tears were streaming down my face now. I couldn't remember the last time I had cried in front of my mother. "Clementine is like you were," Dorothea continued. "She's sensitive. She feels everything deeply. She needs words and presence and attention in ways that are terrifying for people like us. People who don't know how to give those things, because we never receive them ourselves. How do I fix it? How do I become someone who can give her what she needs?" My mother squeezed my hand. "You start by looking at what she's been trying to give you, really looking, not glancing and putting it away for later, not nodding and pretending you've paid attention, actually seeing what your daughter has been telling you for 34 years. She released my hand and nodded toward the box. "Open it." I lifted the cardboard lid with trembling fingers. Inside were dozens of papers, some yellowed with age, some still bright and colorful. I picked up the first one, a drawing done in crayon. It showed a tall figure in a blue dress holding hands with a smaller figure with curly hair. Underneath, in childish letters, it said, "Mommy and me." I picked up another, a letter written in pencil on lined paper. "Dear Mommy, I hope you have a good trip. I will be good while you are gone. I love you so much. I drew you a picture of a rainbow because rainbows make me happy, and I want you to be happy. Love, Clementine. P.S. I will miss you." Another drawing, another letter, a handmade birthday card with glitter that still sparkled after 25 years, a Mother's Day card with pressed flowers taped inside, a Christmas ornament made of popsicle sticks and yarn. 30 years of my daughter's love, preserved in a cardboard box because I couldn't be bothered to preserve it myself. "She never stopped, did she?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Even when I never responded, she never stopped trying." "Not until now," Dorothea said quietly. "The chocolates were her last attempt, and you threw them away just like you threw away everything else." I stayed at Magnolia Gardens for hours, going through every item in that box. I read every letter, studied every drawing, held every handmade gift that my daughter had created with love and hope and desperate need for connection. By the time I finished, I had a complete picture of the childhood I had missed, the milestones I had ignored, the heart I had broken over and over without even knowing. When I finally left, I took the box with me. I drove home in silence, carried it into my study, and began to organize its contents chronologically. I wanted to see the progression. I wanted to understand how my daughter's hope had evolved over the years, how it had dimmed and flickered and somehow miraculously survived. The early drawings were joyful. Bright colors, happy faces, messages full of exclamation points and hearts. "I love you, Mommy. Best mom ever. You are so pretty and smart." As the years went on, the tone shifted. The colors became more muted. The messages became more tentative. "I hope you like this. I know you're busy, but I made this for you. Maybe we can talk sometime." By her teenage years, the letters had become longer and more complex. She wrote about her dreams, her fears, her confusion about why she couldn't seem to connect with me. She asked questions that I had never answered. "Do you think my art is good enough? Are you proud of me? What can I do to make you see me?" The last item in the box was dated from 10 years ago, just before she married Garrett. It was a letter, handwritten on beautiful stationery. "Dear Mom," it read, "I'm getting married tomorrow, and I wanted to write you this letter in case I never get the chance to say these things out loud. I've spent my whole life trying to understand you, trying to figure out what I need to do to make you proud, to make you see me, to make you love me the way I've always needed to be loved. I know you do love me. I've never doubted that, but I've also never felt it. Not in the way Garrett makes me feel loved. Not in the way I want to make my future children feel loved. I used to think there was something wrong with me, that I was too needy, too sensitive, too demanding, but I'm starting to realize that maybe it's not about me at all. Maybe it's about you. Maybe you just don't know how to love out loud. I forgive you for that. I do. But I'm also tired of waiting for something that might never come. So I'm writing this letter to say goodbye to the mother I always wished you would be, and hello to the mother you actually are. I will love you anyway. I will always love you. But I'm going to stop expecting you to change. Your daughter, Clementine." 10 years ago. She had said goodbye to her hope for our relationship a decade ago, and I never even knew. The chocolates hadn't been a last attempt to reach me. They had been a resurrection of hope she thought was dead. A final, desperate gamble that maybe, after all these years, I had changed. And I had proven that I hadn't changed at all. I didn't sleep that night either. I sat in my study with Clementine's letter in my hands, reading it over and over until the words blurred and reformed and blurred again. 10 years. She had given up on me 10 years ago, and then somehow found the courage to try one more time. And I had failed her in the exact same way I had always failed her. By morning, I had made a decision. Not a grand gesture, not an expensive gift, something smaller, something real. I called Garrett. "Mrs. Langley Crane," he answered, his voice cautious. "Clementine still isn't ready to—" "I know. I'm not calling to talk to her. I'm calling to ask you something." A pause. "Okay. Her studio. What time does she usually start working?" "Around 9. She drops the kids at school and goes straight there." "Why?" "Because I'm going to sit outside her studio every day until she's ready to talk to me. Not in my car this time. On the sidewalk, where she can see me, where she can choose to ignore me or invite me in or call the police. But I'm going to be there, every single day, for as long as it takes." Garrett was silent for a long moment. That could be a very long time. "I know. I'm not going anywhere." I drove to Savannah that morning with nothing but my purse and a folding chair I bought at a hardware store along the way. I parked down the street from her studio and walked to the sidewalk directly in front of her windows. I set up my chair, sat down, and waited. At 9:15, I saw Clementine's car pull into the small parking area beside the converted garage. She got out, gathered her bag, and walked toward the studio door. Halfway there, she saw me. She stopped. Even from 20 feet away, I could see the emotions crossing her face. Surprise, anger, pain, and underneath it all, something that looked almost like hope. We stared at each other for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. Then she turned away, unlocked her studio door, and went inside without a word. I stayed in my chair. The morning passed slowly. I watched people walk by, some of them giving me curious looks. A few asked if I was okay. I told them I was waiting for someone. It wasn't a lie. At noon, Garrett's car pulled up. He got out and walked over to me, holding 2 cups of coffee. She called me, said you were really out here. I told you I would be. He handed me one of the cups. She's furious, you know. She thinks this is another one of your grand gestures, another way of making yourself feel better without actually doing the work. It's not. I'm not here to make myself feel better. I'm here to show her that I can be present, that I can wait, that she's worth waiting for. Garrett studied me for a long moment. She said to tell you that you can sit out here until you turn to stone for all she cares. She's not coming out. That's okay. I'll be here tomorrow, too. He shook his head slowly, but there was something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Respect, maybe, or at least the beginning of it. You're really going to do this, aren't you? Just sit out here day after day? For as long as it takes. He left without another word. I finished my coffee and continued to wait. At 6 in the evening, the lights in the studio went off. Clementine emerged, locked the door, and walked to her car without looking at me. She drove away. I folded up my chair and drove back to Charleston. The next morning, I was back. Same chair, same sidewalk, same silent vigil. Clementine arrived at 9:20, saw me, and went inside without acknowledgement. I stayed until she left at 5:45. On the 3rd day, it rained. I brought an umbrella. I sat in my chair with water pooling around my feet, my expensive shoes ruined, my hair plastered to my face. Clementine glanced at me through her studio window several times. She didn't come out. On the 4th day, I brought the cardboard box. I set it beside my chair where she could see it through the window. Her childhood drawings, her letters, her handmade cards. All the love I had ignored for 30 years. Now sitting on a Savannah sidewalk because I didn't know how else to show her that I finally understood. At noon, her studio door opened. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, face unreadable. "What is that?" she asked. Her voice was hoarse, as if she hadn't used it much lately. "Everything you ever gave me. Everything I put away and forgot about. Your grandmother saved them." "Grandma Dorothea?" I nodded. "She's had them for over 20 years. She was waiting for me to ask about them. I never did." Clementine stared at the box for a long time. I could see her hands trembling slightly against her arms. "You're really going to sit out here every day?" "Yes." "Why? What do you think is going to happen? That I'll suddenly forget 34 years of feeling invisible? That a few days on a sidewalk will make up for every recital you missed, every letter you never read, every time you looked right through me?" "No, I don't think that at all." She faltered, clearly expecting a different answer. "Then why are you here?" I stood up slowly, my joints aching from hours in the folding chair. "Because I don't know how to love you the way you need to be loved. I never learned. My mother worked constantly when I was growing up, and I learned that love means providing, not being present. I built my whole life on that belief, and I passed it on to you like a disease." Clementine's eyes were filling with tears, but she didn't move. "That's not an excuse." "No, it's not. It's an explanation. And it's not good enough. Nothing I say will ever be good enough. But I'm here because you're worth more than words. You're worth sitting on a sidewalk in the rain. You're worth ruining expensive shoes. You're worth looking foolish in front of strangers. You're worth whatever it takes for as long as it takes." A tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it away angrily. "I don't know if I can forgive you. I know. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to let me try, to let me sit out here and show you, day after day, that you matter more to me than my pride, my comfort, my schedule, or anything else I've ever put ahead of you." She looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time since this whole nightmare began. And then she said something that broke my heart and gave me hope in equal measure. "I'll leave the door unlocked tomorrow. If you want to come in, you can, but I'm not promising anything." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even acceptance, but it was a door left unlocked, and for the first time in 34 years, I was going to walk through it. I arrived at the studio at 8:30 the next morning, half an hour before Clementine usually got there. I brought the cardboard box with me, along with something else, a notebook I had stayed up all night filling with words I should have said years ago. The door was unlocked, just as she had promised. I pushed it open slowly, feeling like I was entering sacred ground. In a way, I was. This was my daughter's sanctuary, the place where she created beautiful things with her hands while processing a lifetime of pain caused by her mother's absence. The studio was smaller than I expected, but filled with light from large windows on 3 sides. Workbenches lined the walls, covered with tools I didn't recognize and materials in various stages of transformation. Silver wire coiled in neat spools, gemstones sorted by color in small glass containers, sketches pinned to a corkboard, designs for pieces that existed only in my daughter's imagination. I walked slowly around the room, really looking for the first time. On one wall hung photographs of completed pieces, each one more beautiful than the last. Delicate necklaces with organic shapes that seemed to flow like water, earrings that captured light and scattered it like tiny prisms, rings that looked like they had grown rather than been made. My daughter had created all of this. My daughter was an artist of extraordinary talent, and I had never told her. I found a small stool in the corner and sat down to wait. I placed the cardboard box at my feet and held the notebook in my lap, my fingers tracing the cover nervously. I had no idea what I would say when Clementine arrived. I had no script, no plan, no carefully rehearsed speech. For the first time in my life, I was going to simply be present and let whatever happened happen. The door opened at 9:15. Clementine stood in the entrance, backlit by the morning sun, her face in shadow. She didn't move for a long moment, just stared at me sitting in her studio like I belonged there. "You actually came inside," she said finally. "You said the door would be unlocked." She nodded slowly and stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. She moved to her main workbench and began arranging her tools with practiced precision, her back to me. I recognized the gesture. She was giving herself something to do with her hands while she figured out what to say. I didn't push. I just sat there watching her, letting her set the pace. "I almost locked it this morning," she said without turning around. "I stood at my front door for 10 minutes. Trying to decide whether to give you this chance or not." "What made you decide to leave it open?" She was quiet for a moment. "Garrett. He said that if I didn't at least try, I would spend the rest of my life wondering what might have happened. And I've spent enough of my life wondering about you." The words cut deep, as they were meant to. I absorbed them without defense. Clementine turned to face me, leaning against her workbench with her arms crossed. It was a protective posture, one I had seen her adopt countless times over the years, armor against a mother who had never learned to be gentle. "So, you're here. What now?" I looked down at the notebook in my lap, then back up at her. "I don't know. I've never done this before. I've never sat with someone I hurt and tried to make it right without writing a check, or buying a gift, or fixing the problem with money. I don't know how to do this, Clementine, but I want to learn. If you'll teach me." Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or disbelief. "You want me to teach you how to be my mother?" "I want you to teach me how to love you in a way you can feel, because I do love you. I have always loved you. But I've been speaking a language you don't understand, and I've been too stubborn and too proud to learn yours." She stared at me for a long moment. Then she pushed off from the workbench and walked to the stool next to mine. She sat down, close enough that I could see the dark circles under her eyes, the evidence of sleepless nights that mirrored my own. "Do you know what it was like?" she asked quietly. "Growing up with a mother who was always leaving? Tell me. Every time you went on a business trip, I would count the days until you came back. I had a calendar in my room with X marks for every day you were gone. When you finally came home, I would run to the door so fast I would trip over my own feet. And you would hug me, but it was always quick, always distracted, like you were already thinking about the next thing on your list. I remembered those homecomings. I remembered being exhausted from travel, overwhelmed by the work waiting for me, eager to shower and sleep and prepare for the next day's challenges. I remembered my daughters running to greet me, and I remembered feeling suffocated by their need. I had never once considered what those moments meant to them. "I would make you drawings while you were gone," Clementine continued. "I would work on them for hours, trying to make them perfect. I wanted you to hang them on the refrigerator like other moms did. I wanted you to see them and smile and tell me I was talented. What did I do instead? Her voice was barely a whisper. You said they were nice. Then you put them in your office and I never saw them again. I thought you were keeping them somewhere special. I didn't know you were throwing them away. I wasn't throwing them away. I was putting them aside to look at later. But later never came, and eventually they got lost in moves and clean-outs and I stopped. It doesn't matter what I intended. What matters is that you felt unseen. And I'm so sorry, Clementine. I'm so sorry for every drawing I didn't praise, every letter I didn't read, every moment I wasn't present when you needed me. She was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. I wanted desperately to reach out and hold her, but I didn't know if I had the right. So I just sat there, bearing witness to the pain I had caused. The chocolates, she said. Do you understand now why they mattered so much? Yes, they were you. Every piece was a memory you had held on to, a moment we shared that meant something to you. You put your whole heart into that box, and I gave it away without a second thought. I spent 6 weeks learning how to temper chocolate properly. Do you know how hard that is? The temperature has to be exact, or the whole batch is ruined. I ruined so many batches, Mom. I stayed up until 2 in the morning some nights, trying to get it right. Because I wanted to give you something that couldn't be bought, something that only I could give you. And I treated it like nothing. You treated it like everything else I've ever given you. Like it didn't matter. Like I didn't matter. The words hung between us, heavy and true. I had no defense against them because there was no defense. I had treated my daughter like she didn't matter. Not through malice, but through neglect. And the result was the same. I opened the cardboard box at my feet and pulled out the first drawing, the crayon picture of Mommy and me that I had seen at my mother's facility. I held it up so she could see. Your grandmother saved these. Everything you ever gave me, she kept. She was waiting for me to ask about them, and I never did. Not once in over 20 years. Clementine's breath caught. She reached out and took the drawing with trembling hands, staring at it like it was a ghost from another life. I remember making this. I was 5. You were going to New York for a week, and I made it so you could take me with you, kind of. In picture form. Did I take it? She shook her head. You said your suitcase was too full. You said you'd hang it in your office instead. I don't think you ever did. I pulled out more items from the box. Letters, cards, a popsicle stick ornament, a pressed flower bookmark, each one a piece of my daughter's heart that I had carelessly discarded. I read them all, I said. 2 nights ago, I sat in my study and I read every single letter you ever wrote me. I looked at every drawing, I held every gift, and I realized that I had been given the most precious thing in the world over and over again, and I had been too blind to see it. Clementine was holding the drawing against her chest, crying openly now. Why couldn't you see it then? When I was 5, when I was 10, when I was 15? Why did it take 34 years and a box of ruined chocolates for you to finally pay attention? Because I was broken. Because my mother was never present for me. So I didn't know how to be present for you. Because I thought that building an empire and providing financial security was the same as love. Because I was wrong, Clementine. I was wrong about everything that mattered. I put the box aside and picked up the notebook I had brought. I stayed up all night writing this. It's not an apology exactly. It's more like a confession. Everything I should have said to you over the years, but never did. Every proud moment I witnessed and never acknowledged. Every milestone I noticed and never mentioned. It's all in here. I held out the notebook. She didn't take it. I don't want your words on paper, Mom. I've had enough of your words on paper. Words you write and send and never follow up on. Words that don't mean anything because they're never backed up by action. I lowered the notebook. Then what do you want? I want to know if you can actually change. Not say you'll change. Not write about changing. Actually change. Can you be present? Can you show up? Can you love me in a way I can feel, not just in a way that's convenient for you? It was the question I had been dreading. The question I didn't know how to answer honestly. I don't know, I admitted. I'm 58 years old. I've been the way I am for my entire adult life. I don't know if I can change, Clementine, but I know I want to try. I know that losing you would be the worst thing that ever happened to me. I know that sitting on that sidewalk for 4 days, just waiting for you to acknowledge me, felt more right than anything I've done in years. That's not enough. I know it's not. So tell me what would be enough. Tell me what you need, and I will do everything in my power to give it to you. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the drawing in her hands. When she spoke, her voice was steadier than it had been. I need you to know me, not the idea of me that you've created in your head, the real me. I need you to ask me about my work and actually listen to the answer. I need you to visit without bringing your checkbook. I need you to remember my kids' birthdays without your assistant reminding you. I need you to call me just to talk, not because you have news or need something. I can do that. I'm not finished. She looked up at me, her eyes red but fierce. I need you to stop offering me money. Every time you offer to invest in my business or buy me something expensive, it feels like you're trying to buy your way out of actually being present. I don't want your money, Mom. I never wanted your money. I wanted you. The words hit me like a physical blow. All those years of offering financial support, thinking I was being generous, thinking I was showing love the only way I knew how. And all along, it had felt to my daughter like rejection. I understand, I said. No more money, no more gifts that cost a fortune. Just me. Just you might not be enough. I need you to understand that. We might do all of this, and I might still not be able to forgive you. I might still keep you at arm's length for the rest of our lives. Can you accept that? I thought about it honestly. Could I accept a relationship with my daughter that was permanently diminished, permanently scarred by my failures? Could I show up and be present, even knowing that it might never be enough to heal what I had broken? Yes, I said finally. If that's all you can give me, I'll take it. I'd rather have a damaged relationship with you than no relationship at all. I'd rather have you in my life with limitations than not have you at all. Clementine set down the drawing and looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Garrett thinks I should give you a chance. He says everyone deserves the opportunity to prove they've changed. And what do you think? I think I've given you chances my whole life, and you've wasted every single one. She paused. But I also think that you're actually here, in my studio, sitting on an uncomfortable stool, without your checkbook or your expensive gifts or your solutions, just you. And that's something you've never done before. She reached out and took my hand. It was the first time she had voluntarily touched me in years. Her fingers were calloused from her work, strong and capable. The hands of an artist, the hands of a woman who had built something beautiful out of her pain. I'm not forgiving you, she said clearly. Not yet, maybe not ever, but I'm willing to let you try. I'm willing to let you show up and be present and prove that you can change. And if you can't, if you fall back into your old patterns, I'm done. For good. No more chances. I understand. And I want you to start now. Right now. Don't go back to Charleston tonight. Stay here. Have dinner with us. Help Calder with his homework. Read Ivy a bedtime story. Be a grandmother, not just a bank account. I'd like that, I said. And I meant it more than I had ever meant anything. Clementine squeezed my hand once, then let go. She stood up and walked back to her workbench, picking up a piece of silver wire and beginning to shape it with practiced movements. I'm going to work now, she said. You can stay and watch if you want. Or you can go get coffee and come back, whatever you want. Just be here. That's all I'm asking. Just be here. I stayed. I watched my daughter create something beautiful out of raw materials, her hands moving with confidence and grace. I didn't interrupt. I didn't offer suggestions or criticism or praise. I just witnessed her, fully present, fully attentive, for the first time in her entire life. And somewhere in that quiet studio, surrounded by the evidence of my daughter's talent and resilience, I felt something shift inside me. A door opening that I hadn't even known was closed. The beginning of something new, something fragile, something worth protecting. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't reconciliation, but it was a start. That night, I stayed for dinner. It wasn't a fancy meal. Garrett made spaghetti with jarred sauce while Clementine helped Ivy wash her hands, and Calder set the table with mismatched plates. The dining room was small, the chairs didn't quite match, and there was a crayon mark on the wall that no one had bothered to clean. It was nothing like the formal dinners I hosted in my Charleston mansion with catered food and fine china. It was perfect. I sat between my grandchildren and listened to Calder talk about his soccer practice, really listened, asking follow-up questions and remembering the names of his teammates. I helped Ivy cut her spaghetti into smaller pieces when she struggled with her fork. I complimented Garrett on the garlic bread, which was slightly burnt but made with obvious care. Clementine watched me throughout the meal. I could feel her eyes on me, assessing, waiting to see if this new version of her mother was real or just another performance. I didn't try to prove anything. I just stayed present, moment by moment, letting my actions speak for themselves. After dinner, I helped with the dishes. Clementine washed while I dried, standing side by side at the kitchen sink, like we had never done when she was growing up. Our elbows bumped occasionally. Neither of us moved away. "Calder has a book report due Friday," she said quietly. "He's been struggling with it. He's supposed to read to an adult for 20 minutes every night. I could help with that, if you'd like." She handed me a wet plate without looking at me. "His room is the second door on the left. He's probably already in his pajamas." I found my grandson sitting on his bed, a worn paperback in his hands, looking frustrated. He looked up when I knocked on the doorframe. "Grandma? Mom said you might help me with my reading. If you'll have me." He scooted over to make room, and I sat beside him on the small bed, my back against the headboard decorated with soccer stickers. He handed me the book, a story about a dog who goes on adventures, and pointed to where he had left off. "I'm not very good at reading," he said, his voice small. "The words get jumbled sometimes. That's okay. We'll go slow. And if you get stuck, I'll help." For the next 20 minutes, I listened to my grandson read. He stumbled over words, lost his place, got frustrated and wanted to quit. I didn't rush him. I didn't check my phone or think about what else I should be doing. I just sat there, patient and present, helping him sound out the difficult words and praising him when he got through a tough passage. When we finished the chapter, he looked up at me with a smile that reminded me so much of Clementine at that age that my heart ached. "Thanks, Grandma. That was actually kind of fun." "It was fun for me, too. Maybe I could help you again tomorrow night." "Really? You're staying?" I glanced toward the door, where Clementine stood watching us. She gave me a small nod. "Yes," I said. "I'm staying." I slept in their guest room that night, a small space with a pull-out couch and walls covered in Ivy's artwork. Before I went to sleep, I stood in front of those drawings for a long time. Bright colors, happy faces, the same joyful energy that had filled Clementine's childhood creations. I made a silent promise to myself that I would never ignore these drawings the way I had ignored her mother's. The next morning, I made pancakes. They were lumpy and misshapen because I hadn't cooked breakfast in years, but the children ate them with enthusiasm and asked for seconds. Clementine sat across the table from me, drinking her coffee, still watching, still waiting. I stayed for 3 days. I helped with homework every night. I read bedtime stories to Ivy, doing silly voices that made her giggle. I sat in Clementine's studio and watched her work, asking questions about her techniques and her inspiration. I learned the names of her favorite gemstones and the history behind the design she created. On the 3rd day, as I was packing to return to Charleston, Clementine came to the guest room door. "You're really leaving?" "I have to. I have appointments, responsibilities, but I'll be back on Friday, if that's okay." She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed in that familiar protective gesture. But something in her posture had softened. Friday works. And I was thinking, maybe next month, for Calder's birthday, instead of sending a gift, I could come help with the party. If you need help. A flicker of something crossed her face. Surprise, maybe. Or hope. "We're doing a soccer theme. It's going to be chaotic." "I can handle chaotic," she almost smiled. "We'll see." I drove back to Charleston with a feeling I hadn't experienced in years. Not satisfaction exactly, not happiness. Something quieter than that. Something like possibility. The months that followed were not easy. Old habits don't die quickly, and there were times when I caught myself reaching for my checkbook or offering to solve problems with money instead of presents. Each time I stopped myself. Each time I chose differently. I visited Savannah every weekend. I sat in Clementine's studio and learned about jewelry making. I attended Calder's soccer games and cheered louder than any other grandmother there. I had tea parties with Ivy and let her put plastic tiaras on my head and paint my nails in colors that would have horrified my Charleston society friends. Slowly, carefully, my daughter began to trust me. She started calling me during the week. Not long calls, just quick check-ins. Mom, you'll never guess what Ivy said today. Mom, I'm working on a new design, and I can't decide between silver and gold. Small moments of connection that meant everything to me because she was choosing to share them. Laurelyn noticed the change. You seem different, she said one afternoon when we met for our monthly lunch. Lighter somehow. I'm trying to be, I told her. I'm trying to be the mother I should have been all along. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. It's not too late for us either, you know. I may have learned to accept your way of loving, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't appreciate a different way. I started visiting her too, not with expensive gifts or offers of financial help. Just me, showing up, being present, asking about her cases and her life and her dreams for the future, listening to the answers. Christmas that year was held at Clementine's house instead of my mansion. The tree was slightly crooked, the decorations were handmade by the children, and the meal was potluck style, with everyone contributing something. It was messy and loud, and absolutely nothing like the elegant holidays I had hosted in the past. When it came time to exchange gifts, Clementine handed me a small box wrapped in gold paper. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were chocolates, handmade chocolates, each one carefully crafted, each one containing a memory. Lavender from my mother's garden, honey from Pemberton Farm, rose essence from the perfume I used to wear, and a new flavor I didn't recognize. What's this one? I asked, holding up a chocolate dusted with something that looked like cinnamon. Clementine smiled, and it was a real smile, the kind that reached her eyes. That one's new. It's Mexican hot chocolate, Calder's favorite. I added it because we're making new memories now, not just holding on to the old ones. I ate every chocolate slowly, savoring each one, describing the flavors out loud, asking about her process. When I finished, I looked at my daughter with tears streaming down my face. Thank you, I said, for giving me another chance, for letting me prove that I could change, for these chocolates and everything they represent. Clementine reached over and took my hand. Thank you for actually changing. I didn't think you could, Mom. I really didn't. But you proved me wrong. I'm still learning. I still make mistakes. I know. But you're here. You're present. You're trying. She squeezed my hand. That's all I ever wanted. Later that night, after the children were in bed and Garrett was cleaning up the kitchen, Clementine and I sat together on her small porch, looking up at the stars. I forgive you, she said quietly. I didn't think I ever would, but I do. Not because you deserve it, but because holding on to that anger was hurting me more than it was hurting you, and because you've shown me over and over these past months that you're not the same person who gave away my chocolates without opening the box. I didn't say anything. I just sat there beside my daughter, fully present, fully grateful, watching the stars and feeling the warmth of her forgiveness wrap around me like a gift I didn't deserve, but would spend the rest of my life trying to earn. The chocolates had brought us to the breaking point, but they had also shown us the way back to each other, and that was the sweetest thing of all.